Hello and welcome once again to episode 79 of Code Completion. We are a group of iOS developers and educators hoping to share what we love most about development, Apple technology, and completing your code. My name is Dimitri and I'll be your host once again for this episode, and I'm joined today by my fellow completionist, Spencer.
Hey there.
So this past weekend, I took a rare occasion to step out of my home to go vote in the French elections, and I was reminded from the choice of candidates that we really live in a world where some try to propagate negativity and others are fighting desperately to preserve some positivity in the world. So I wanted to talk about the importance of spreading positivity in your local communities, whether that's in person or your online communities, your developer communities, and talk about that importance, because I really do think that spreading more positivity does more good than getting a good quip in to put someone down, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. That said, I don't know if I'm the best example of that because I keep bringing you down about your RAM usage, but that I think we're all good on that. I think that that's a joke and I'm not actually.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, no, I agree though. It's interesting. I mean, obviously everyone knows that in today's society and world, we it's very polarized, right? In essentially every aspect. But I think in our iOS developer community, I think in general, it's definitely more. It seems more positive than negative. But that said, you kind of have this more that maybe the inner circle, and then you've got the outer circle of your customers, and then you can sort of you have these sort of I guess you would call them slightly external interactions with people that perhaps aren't as
Trained.
positive, or yeah, exactly. So there's, I think we all know, if you've ever been on social media of any kind, that there is sort of mental danger of putting yourself out there on the internet, right? You as soon as you put yourself out there, you are allowing yourself to be either criticized in one way or another, whether that's good or bad. So as an example, Dimitri's got on here 1-star reviews, right? You and I've seen this in person where you could go on any app on the App Store probably and find 1-star reviews, even if the app is absolutely amazing. And that, as a developer, you know what the developers are going through to bring this app to someone, and often it's going to be a labor of love if it's just an indie app, right? Maybe it's even free, but then people are dragging it through the mud because it doesn't have this feature or it crashed on them or something. So in that sense, it can be really hard to put yourself out there and say, I'm going to try to provide this thing that I find useful, or I think other people will find useful, and then have it kind of not necessarily backfire, but have people not appreciate it perhaps in the way that you would like them to, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I like what you said about things being very polarized. Whether they're polarized or there's a lot of nuance, this is a separate conversation, kind of. It's okay to have your own express opinions about something, but
Sure.
the way in which you share those opinions with others, I think, is where we're trying to focus on here, because you can do so as constructively as possible and gain a lot of benefit from that, or you can do it very in a very unnuanced way and just drag them through the mud, as you mentioned. Putting anything on the internet is really just putting a target on yourself that others are definitely going to attack. And that's expressively so if you're not if you don't look like us, if you're not white male individuals, then you are going to be subject to all sorts of criticism that have nothing to do with the work that you actually made, which is why a lot of people just try to remain anonymous as much as possible on the internet. So I I think it's important to think about as much as possible, because we're all going to slip up at some way. Like, emotions always kind of get the better of every one of us. I mean, that's what human is that's what being a human is all about. But at the same time, we have our intellect to kind of save us and pull back a little when our emotions get too strong for something. And I think like this goes towards both if you're a customer of something or if you're a fellow developer, to really, really try to not ruin someone's day by just putting some words on a screen, because it's another human on the other side of it, and they are going to be hurt by whatever you say. So you can either make their day, or you can ruin it in one fell swoop, and that's something that you should think about, especially if you want to get something done, right? If you need a feature, don't leave a 1-star review, because then that's going to just like demotivate the person who's gonna write your feature, and I don't think that's constructive in getting what you want out of like what you're trying to do.
Yeah, I mean, let's take that example of like wanting a new feature. There's a much more constructive way of doing it rather than posting a 1-star review, or you could go to their website, or if they have like a support email. I think that's actually required, if I remember right, in the App Store submission. It's been a hot minute.
You have to have a support URL, not necessarily an email.
Okay. But you could probably go to their website. They might have one there. They might have, their Twitter handle or something on there. Some way to contact them directly and say, hey, I think this would be a great feature. I mean, wording is so, it's everything, right? There's a very easy way to change this from, I hate the app because it doesn't have X feature, to, hey, this is a great app. I think it would be awesome with, this feature. Have you considered working on this? Or, I have a bunch of people that would love to see this. And then that becomes a motivator rather than a demotivator for them, because they're going to think, oh, okay, well, maybe if I have enough ticks of people that want this feature, it's worth my time to do this, whether it's a paid app or a free app.
And that doesn't mean you can't express your emotions, right? You can say,
sure,
it frustrates me every single time I go and make an edit and the thing crashes. But you don't have to attack the other person for that, right? It in a way is their fault for building something that crashes and that loses everything you work on. But at the same time, that's not their goal, right? They didn't expressly make something to drive you nuts. And they would benefit from you telling them more details about like your specific scenario. So you can express your frustration. Just be sure to contextualize it into something that's tangible and practical for them to fix. Like, I hate when this app crashes, 1 star. That's not useful.
That's not useful.
If you say it frustrates me whenever I go ahead and make a new document and add a table, and whenever I hit the 20th row, then the app crashes. And one, that shouldn't even go in a review. Like, you should go and use the support channels like Spencer mentioned. But if the support channels don't help, like sometimes developers don't necessarily monitor those. There are other avenues that you can go towards, like if they're on Twitter, if they're on Facebook, you can ping them there. And if none of that works and you really like the app otherwise, and you wanted to, like, you are using it, right? You're invested in it to a certain amount. You can go ahead and, I guess, leave a review, but be mindful that your star rating, like that one little thing, can really hinder the potential for what you want to be fixed actually getting fixed, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, just going on these kind of, I mean, we could take the reviews as an example. You could get 4 and 5-star reviews all day long, and you feel pretty good about yourself, for making an app that people like. But then you get a single 1-star review, and it can, ruin your week or your month or something, and really, bring you down quite a bit in comparison to a single 5-star review bringing you up. And so it's a lot easier to be negative and have these negative emotions kind of impact you, I suppose. At least it does for me, for sure. So, I mean, on the flip side, as a customer, I always try to think about, obviously, like Dimitri said, obviously the app, they didn't write the app so it crashes or whatever. So try to see it from their perspective and be constructive, and you can criticize, whatever they're doing, but do it in a constructive way that's not just bringing them down. And again, you could use those alternate support channels or whatever. So, I don't know. It's interesting being positive, even if you are perhaps frustrated. But I always try to find it important to be see things from other people's perspective. Like for example, let's see, how do I word this? Like separating the person from the product, right? Like the app may crash, but that doesn't mean the person is a terrible person. Or I'll get like recruiters from Facebook all the time on LinkedIn asking to join their team and stuff. And I have this like canned response because it's happened a couple times, and I'll say something like, hey, I'm not interested. While I like, this is nothing against you as a person, but I have issues, like ethical issues with Facebook as a company. So like, please don't take this personally, but I don't want to work for them. Please just take me off your list. I don't want to hear from you guys again. I don't know. I don't know if that's a great example, but for me, it's like, I I'm not mad at you, the person that's trying to recruit me, because you're just doing your job. I am mad at Facebook. So I'm trying to direct that anger and frustration towards them rather than the person that's just trying to, cold call people on LinkedIn doing their job. So.
Mm-hmm. I think one more example that we can kind of go through because it's completely relevant. You might have noticed that a lot of YouTube channels, the creator does not read their comments. And the comments in this case are a very similar thing because one, you don't even have a star rating to guide you as far as like which ones you should read and which ones you should have someone else read and then report back to you because they are distanced from the thing that got created,
Sure.
so therefore they're less impacted. But like you, if you were to read something that like just puts you down, like that's it. Like that's all you need to like ruin your day, as we've said several times before. And as a result, a lot of YouTube creators will just not read any of their comments because there's no way to know which ones are nice and which ones are helpful and useful. Because a lot of times, like there is like a useful conversation that happens in those comments, but you kind of have to sequester yourself from all of it if a single one of them might drag you through the mud for no good reason. And there are different levels of being dragged through the mud, of course. But any attack that's personal to the human on the screen, those are the ones I'm talking about. Again, you can be critical of stuff without attacking the person directly.
Yeah.
And that is the big distinction that honestly takes training. Like you need to learn how to do that and learn how to enunciate your thoughts in a way that are not going to destroy someone. And that's hard, right? It's not something that comes naturally. Just like it's easy to be negative, it's easy to be destroyed by negativity, ironically enough. So it does take a lot of practice to be better and to be more positive, but it is something that's worth pursuing. I think.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's, like you said, it's very easy to react to something, just kind of, I guess, throw whatever's on the top of your head, and it's try not to be as reactive rather than, I don't have a good word for it, but thoughtfully reactive, I guess. Collect yourself and collect maybe your emotions. And I've definitely had to do this before, I mean, on Twitter or whatever. I think like a great example of like something getting to me was what's his name? I now just do not interact with the guy at all because I just when he put an article, I think on Hacker News or something, that was dragging us, mostly me, I think, um, because when we were teaching at Lambda, because I had no experience in the field, right? That was hard for me to kind of take. And I mean, he had some valid points, but also I felt from my side that I was able to do my job, if that makes sense. I don't know. But that was a time when I reacted very just like immediately, and I didn't really think about anything else, and that was hard for me, and I did not feel great about myself for a while because of what he said. And so, um not to say that some of his points perhaps weren't valid, but in the moment it's hard to kind of see things, perhaps objectively. And I just kind of honed in and focused in on what he said. And so I don't know. I don't know
And
where I was going with that, but
no. I like that example a lot because one, it was kind of made worse by the fact that it was indirect. Like it wasn't specifically targeting you, but you felt like you connected the points in your own head and got like put down by that, right?
yeah.
And that is like almost an indirect like what's the best way to say it? It's a very educated way of like destroying someone.
Yeah.
It takes intellect to be able to do that if you are doing it purposefully. And if you're not doing it purposefully, if you do it by accident, it's worse because people will think that you did it purposely, just to like indirectly jab at you. And that is something that, as I said, you really need to practice not attacking people to not do that by accident, because you can do so much more damage by just being indirect about it and not being specific about it. Because now, not only do you feel that way, but all the other teachers at Lambda felt that way. Because they could make those same connections, like, oh, they're talking about me. Like, they're not thinking about you. They thought you were fine, but they thought that the criticism was directly related to them.
Right.
So now that criticism is directly impacting a whole bunch of people when one was mal researched. Like it was just like a jab of some anonymous person on Hacker News that wanted to feel righteous, and then propagated by someone with thousands of followers. Like that was in very poor taste. And like that's one reason why like I do not respect this person anymore, despite having like met them and thought they were a nice person. Like that one comment and the fact that they never owned up to it really felt like it felt bad. But at the same time, like we're trying to talk about like not being negative at the same time. So like yes, that criticism, like there might be something to learn from that, and therefore, if it's something that we can do, like we would try to be better at it, right? And that's what like growing is all about, right? Not focusing on it, but focusing on how to improve from that situation. Not forgetting it either, right? You want to remember, you want to build upon that. You don't want to live your life full of regrets and just like not learning from your own mistakes. Like we do that plenty around the world already. So it's like it's important to remember it. It's important to grow from it, and it's important to not dwell on it, I would say.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that's more or less why I've sort of just distanced myself from him. I stopped following him on Twitter and stuff, and I just, I realized that while he's not, I guess he, for lack of a better word, I know he's not really attacking, us or Lambda School or anything. Well, maybe Lambda School a little bit, but not us directly anymore. I sort of avoid him just because that brings up those, those memories and stuff. And that's, on me for not kind of getting past it, I suppose. But I think it brings up a point where that was one time where I felt like intense imposter syndrome. And I think that's something very common throughout everyone's career as a developer, is just, feeling like you're not good enough, or, you don't belong in the position you're in, or whatever it is. that was definitely a time for me where I had intense imposter syndrome. So, I don't really think I'm a great example of, how to get over that, because I feel it all the time, and maybe we all do or something. But I think that's something that all of these, it can be a result of the 1-star reviews or whatever criticisms that you get, is you begin to feel imposter syndrome. And that, I think, is something that I need to learn to overcome. Still, I don't have a great answer for for those listening on how to overcome it, or get better at ignoring. I don't know.
And I don't think you need to quote unquote overcome it or ignore it. But you do need to realize that imposter syndrome can fuel like more negativity, because you might feel like, oh, what makes this other person so high and mighty? So then you, to make yourself feel better, can drag them through the mud. Like, I'm not saying that you, Spencer, would do that, but I have seen that behavior time and time again, where it's not like that person means it per se. They're just frustrated. And that frustration manifests itself into like being mean to other people. And that is something that like later in their life, once they are no longer in that same situation, they'll realize and learn from. And in that same situation that you were feeling, I called them out like on Twitter when they mentioned that, and I said, this feels like you're attacking people. And although they never replied, I like to think that in the back of my mind they saw that and they felt shitty about that. Like, as plain as it is, like, to feel a little bit of shame about what you did, maybe that's enough for them to grow from that. Like, I don't think they've attacked people since. So I think that was hopefully the best way to deal with that, even if they never quote unquote owned up to it publicly. But it is something that if you feel like you yourself are inadequate, you can very easily project that on others. And it is something that you need to try your best, whether you feel imposter syndrome or not, to not do, right?
Yeah, I think,
and I don't know like how to do that, but it's something to think about.
Yeah, well, I think that you bring up a great point where it can become this vicious cycle of just negativity towards everyone else. And I mean, going back to our kind of original point, I think that's just what's going on in general with the world, is just someone's negative to you, so then you take out your negativity on someone else, and it just kind of spirals that way. So I agree that that can lead to, oh well, let me try to make myself feel better by bringing someone down. So I mean, again, for me, when I have like those reactionary moments where I'm just like, I want to send a strongly worded tweet to this person. I'm glad that it's now 280 characters instead of 140.
Yeah, the sign that you ran out of characters is a sign that you potentially said too much, but don't get rid of the best parts and leave the most negative ones as a result of that.
Yes, agreed. But think about like, think about what you're gonna say before you say it. I mean, like, if you have nothing good to say, don't say it at all, type of thing. But I think there are times to criticize, but don't drag people through the mud. I don't know what else to say. Like, you could, try to be constructive in everything, whether it's I don't know. I mean, it's not like I'm this white knight of positivity, but I very much try to not be reactionary in things like that. I don't know.
No, and absolutely, I want to remind our audience that we are not by no means the perfect examples of what we're trying to say, but we do want, like, us saying it is enough for us to think about it, and that's why we're saying it, because we were thinking about it, and we hope that others can think about it, because the more people that think about it, I think the more benefit we all have as a result of that, because it influences everyone. Like, another example that I thought of, and I'm gonna try to not be too specific, so if you know about it, then you're gonna recognize it, but if you don't, then no one is further harmed by it. But if it becomes like a habit of everyone involved to portray a certain public member of a community as something that kind of gets dehumanized as a result of that, it can very easily spread, like, in a playful way, like, oh, that person is so like this, and no one means any harm by it, right? But on the other side of all that is one person who keeps hearing the same phrase. That person is so like this. And that can either put a smile to their face or grind them down little by little by little by little by little. And we really need to be careful, because for anyone that is put on a public pedestal, whether they were aiming for that or whether it happened slowly just because they were a generally nice person, we need to be very careful, remembering that we may all know more about them than they know about any of us. So if you are a close friend, like Spencer telling me my RAM usage is ridiculous, like, that's totally fine. Like, I know Spencer very well, and one, I know that he is trying to get deep cuts, but I'm not going to let him. So, like, that is a complete separate thing than if any one of you listeners said that my RAM usage was ridiculous, because, like, what do you know about that? Like, sure, you may know a lot because I've spoken a lot about it, right? But at the same time, you are not someone that I know, therefore I can't make that complete connection of, like, what I know that you know. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And therefore I would potentially, and I would try not to publicly, but internally I would find it a little bit offensive. And if that happened every single day for months and months and months, like, I would feel drained by it. And at one point there'd be a tipping point and I would blow up about it. And I don't want a potentially very nice person that I've never met to be the person I blow up to.
Right.
Like, along those lines, because you were just the one that, like, you were that piece of straw that broke the camel's back, you know?
Right.
And no one meant any harm by it. They were trying to be nice. They were trying to use that one little thing that they knew to get into the conversation. And that was the mistake, right? And it was a mistake because they saw everyone else doing it, and therefore, oh, it seems like it was okay. Everyone's just laughing it off, right? So they tried to do it too, but it turned out to be very insensitive. So even if common things, like, circulate and they seem funny because everyone's laughing about it, do try to think about what those words mean and how that meaning changes when they come out of your mouth as a stranger to that person, versus your mouth as a good friend of that person, right?
Yeah, that makes sense. And yeah, I should probably stop saying that anyway.
No, you are totally A-okay to say it.
I know.
But at the same time, like, you have a responsibility as someone saying it publicly now that is slowly propagating, right? So I guess that's the other way of thinking about it. So Spencer, please continue it publicly, because I do find it funny. But not in public anymore, right?
Yeah.
Or privately. I don't know what I just said. Words came out of my mouth.
I got you.
So do it privately, but not publicly.
Yeah.
Maybe. Or, I mean, it's up to you. You're a person. You can make your own decisions. If you want to drag me through the mud.
I know, and that's the thing,
that's
right?
your
It's
prerogative.
like, now it's affecting more than you. I mean, it always has affected you, but now it could potentially affect more than you, and then thus sort of multiply its effect on you. So it's an interesting...
And I use that as a very frivolous example. Like, to be clear, I'm not at all, like, offended of that. Or by that, and it will soon not be an issue because I will have lots of RAM. So I'm looking forward to that, and we'll talk about it when it happens. But And that was a very particular example of someone else in the community that I noticed, and I thought that was an excellent example to focus on, because it is something that does happen. It's not, we're not talking about hypotheticals here. I just don't want to necessarily name people to help propagate it.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think something that, like, we've all been talking about, like, the other direction of the many to the few, kind of, like, words that can really hurt individuals. But I think this goes the other way around, too. So say you get an email from a customer and they're potentially angry. You should not necessarily reply in that same tone. At the same time, you shouldn't necessarily reply in a very distant tone either. And something I've noticed, as I've done both indie and non-indie development, is we kind of have this dream as an indie developer, is like, oh, like, we too can be a corporation. We use we everywhere in all of our talking points. And as a result, people think we are a real corporation. Who'd have thunk? Just by, like, that the little change in framing would have been enough to get people to change how they perceive, like, you as an individual.
Right.
And that is potentially not what you want, because now people are going to call you up as if you were an angry corporate, like a gigantic corporation with 1 million people on staff, and they're expecting, oh, the first line of defense is not going to give two hoots about my problem, and I'm going to have to fight it all the way up. And little do they know, they go directly to you.
Yeah,
The founder, the CEO, the treasurer, the secretary, the developer, the designer, the product manager, the customer support. That's all you. You with that single long title. So if you reply to that email saying, oh, we apologize for this, this, and this, try to personalize it as much as possible. Because what this will do is make people realize you are a human being. Yeah. And one, they will never send that angry thing to begin with if you kind of frame it that way. And two, if they do frame it that way and then you, like, remind them just by using simple words like, oh, I am so sorry you felt this way. When I made the feature, I didn't think that it would do... Like, the little subtleness is there. And again, like I've said this time and time again, you need to learn how to do this. So maybe I'm just, like, putting the idea in your head so that way you can practice it. But those little subtleties can change the conversation instantly. I've seen it many, many times where someone just writes you something very angry and frustrated, and then you reply like that and they're like, I'm so sorry, like, I didn't think that you were the one doing it. And then you can get into that conversation separately of actually trying to help fix, like, the problem that they're having and the frustrations that they're having. Because ideally you want to either, like, fix it, or you don't think it's part of, like, the product you're trying to build, but you can say that politely. You can say, like, I'm so sorry, like, this is not part of the goals that I'm trying to hit. Like, it's kind of something completely separate. And although I, as a developer, might add something like that in the future, I don't think I will. But there are all these other, like, tools that you can probably give a try, and go from there. And I encourage you to ask Apple for a refund. I once again have no control over that process, and they claim they have no control over that process, but they somehow are able to give you refunds. I don't know how that works. So you can subtly throw Apple under the bus and save yourself. And yeah, so I guess try to frame things differently if you do get attacked. Like, don't take it personally, especially if you've been portraying yourself as, like, a group of individuals when you're not a group of individuals. Or even if you are a group of individuals, those individuals might just be, like, the creators of something, right? And if you are someone who's just handling support, like, yes, it's a little easier to distance yourself because you weren't the one that created the thing that made the decision the way it was. And it might be more difficult because you have no power to change it, right? But you can you can consult those people before replying, so that way you know how to reply in many similar situations, because ideally if you're running support for an app, you're getting a lot of the same criticisms over and over. So you can like humanize it a little bit, like refer to the developer as by their first name, as like, oh hey, assuming they want that, of course. Don't do that if they don't want that. But like, hey, Dimitri didn't consider your use case when he built that, and it may not be something that we can actually do in the app, but we thank you for like your criticism, and or not your criticism, but your feedback. Yeah. And we take your frustrations to heart, because that is a frustrating situation that you're in. Like it's completely rational that you are frustrated by that, and try to find a solution that works for everyone. But like, I assume that's your job, so you already know how to do that. But if you are hitting a lot of negativity and you don't know why, that may be one way to reframe it.
Yeah, I think exactly what you said is I think humanizing is the perfect way to sum that up, right? That's ultimately, I agree. Like, you want to be this we apologize or whatever. You want to be more than you, but ultimately, I think humanizing it, like you said, and just saying like, oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't think about this or whatever, that's huge. And I agree that it will definitely reframe how the customer is perceiving you as an app. It's not this giant company, it's you. Or if it is a giant company, like, I personally, when I'm responding, I do this very rarely, but I've responded to a couple support emails, and yeah, just say like, oh, I try to use I and use the first person, and not say like, oh, we're so sorry or whatever. I don't know. For me, I agree, that just seems much more personable, and like you're actually speaking to a human being, right? I mean, I think about how frustrated I get when I call my bank or whatever, and it's like, it's an automated thing. It's like, press this to go to whatever, and it's like, please just let me speak to a human being.
It's a person that's very good at talking at like a cadence and waiting for numbers to come in, because they don't want to hear your complaints.
Then we're at an impasse. I'm not sure what to do then.
Help.
But people, I think, just want to relate to a person, right? You are an individual as a customer. You want to speak to an individual, not this, again, like faceless corporation that, sits in their high rise or whatever. Just be a person.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's very interesting that we bring up the word you, because you started off as like a plural in itself. Like, we're using we now, but you used to be like a plural of something. And because it was a plural and we were trying to be more polite, like we as a people, not we as you and I, then it became part of the everyday vernacular for a single person as a result of that, and you see that in a lot of other romantic languages where we still have that. It's like, if you want to show respect towards someone, you use the third person, or not the third person, the plural version of a term, so that way they can feel elevated as a result. They're not just one individual, they're a group of individuals in a way. And English used to have that as well, until it just became everyday speech. So it's important to contextualize, even when you say you. Like, if I'm trying to tell Spencer something and I say, oh, you might see that when we do this kind of stuff, it's like Spencer might take that directly. It's like, hey, he's talking about me,
right? Yeah.
But I can very easily change that context by saying, oh, you as like a group of individuals could very much, like, just by adding a group of individuals into that, you can change the context significantly towards the point where Spencer's no longer just focusing on himself in the rest of the sentence I'm trying to say, and he can focus on it as the words I'm trying to convey instead. So I myself said that before when I said like we, is like, oh, not you and I, Spencer, but like we in the general sense. Just like adding those little clarifications are oftentimes very useful in general. And again, it takes practice. Like, no one's going to go ahead and do this automatically. It takes effort to change how we speak and how we think, but just practice makes perfect. Actually, no, it's not practice makes perfect. It's practice makes permanent, because the more you practice something, the more you're going to do it, whether you're practicing the right thing or the wrong thing. So it's just something that will stick around and will be automatic after a certain point. And I think the same goes for like just being positive in general. Like, you can dwell on every mistake that everyone has ever made. You can be angry at things, or you can try to not. Like, as a kid, I remember my parents saying, oftentimes after I said something that I probably shouldn't have said, they said, turn your tongue 7 times in your mouth. And I didn't understand the meaning of that, because they didn't explain it to me. So I was just there turning my tongue in my mouth. And then I said the mean thing anyways. And like, there was a miscommunication there in what they're trying to tell me. But the thought was, turn your tongue 7 times in your mouth so you have time to think about what you're about to say. And if that's really what you actually want to say or not. Kind of like what you're saying before is, like, if you're typing out an angry tweet and now you have so much room for it, or sometimes you go overflow, and now you have to think about like what you want to keep and what you don't want to keep in there. And you can get rid of all the vowels and have like a very text heavy angry spew of negativity, sure. Or you can get rid of the negative aspects and focus on just constructive criticism that can actually be acted upon, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. I think if we had to sum it all up, it would be something like, don't be a jerk. And that's, I think, that would get you pretty far. Just be conscious of other people. You're the only one living in your body and in your perspective, but realize that there are almost 8 billion other people that are experiencing the same thing in a different way. And that's a lot to think about too. I mean, it's not an easy task, I don't think, to see things from other people's perspective either. But on some level, you can relate to them as a human being, and they have the same emotions as you do. They can have the same emotions as you can, and try not it. Yeah, I mean, if you think that you saying something rude to yourself, let's see. If someone saying that rude thing to you would bring you down, it would probably be bringing someone else down as well, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that was another thing that as a kindergartner, I distinctly remember teachers trying to like share that thought of like, oh, how would you feel if they said that to me? I was like, well, me as a smartass, I'm going to say like, well, then they meant it, and that's that.
All right, maybe that doesn't work for everyone.
I didn't get the message. And I think it's important to communicate that message as clear as possible when you are trying to give someone advice. Like, try not to be nuanced. Sometimes being nuanced is not what you actually need. So, yeah. This week's episode of Code Completion is brought to you by Weekly Swift Exercises. Learning Swift, there's no substitute for practicing. There's literally dozens of people Fernando's mentored through different programs, and he's seen it time and time again. After you learn the basics of programming, you slow down because learning through experience is demanding and painful. Increasing your confidence is key, and there's an easy way to do it: practice. Fernando's weekly exercises help you practice concepts like closures and protocols while implementing actual features like dark mode. It's free to join. Besides the exercises, Fernando sends 1 or 2 articles about learning Swift. Some are technical in nature, but most of them will help you in your career by teaching you things like best practices, working as a team, and getting ready for your first job. Thanks again to Fernando and Weekly Swift Exercises for sponsoring Code Completion. Go to twitter.com/Swift Exercises today to learn more. With all that out of the way, I want to personally thank everyone for listening in this week. Please be sure to follow us on Twitter at Code Completion to know when new episodes get released, and feel free to tweet at us if there's ever a topic you'd like for us to dig into. Most importantly, as a small podcast, please be sure to share this with your friends and family who are also interested in any part of the process of app development. It's your support that enables us to continue doing this, and we hope to grow a healthy community around everything we discuss. Once again, I want to give my thanks to Spencer, who's at Spencer C. Curtis. That's SpencerCurtis on Twitter, for joining me this week. My name, once again, is Dimitri. You can find me at Dimitri Buñol. That's DIMITRIBOUNIOL. And we'll see you all next week.
Bye.
My Mac Studio is finally coming next week.
Nice.
Or Wednesday.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's good. So did it got pushed forward?
Yeah, it was currently at like 24 days, and then it just blipped into 4 days. So I'm like, yes.
Nice.
Finally. So I will update everyone on how it deals with the RAM situation. I feel like in the latest updates of what are we on, Monterey? 10 Mac OS 12, not 10 dot.
Yeah.
But I feel like in the latest update, like it got worse. Where it's just like the computer being on for like a few days is enough for Safari and Xcode to gobble up all means of available RAM. I really don't know.
Yeah,
I feel like my iCloud must be like corrupted in some way. Yeah. That it just like saturates everything.
Yeah. Hey, it's spring. You could do a little spring tab cleaning and clean up all your iCloud tabs.
I do that like every morning.
Yeah, except
not my iCloud tabs. Exactly. My phone is still at like 500, so I'm like deleting just a few, just so I have a few open.
That's my point, dude. Come on.
I don't know. I feel like if Apple has a hard limit in there, it should be fairly easy to be constructive about that hard limit and like not actually load any of those tabs or just have them as like a single record that's small. I don't know. I feel this pain.
I know.
On a daily basis.
You should write a very strongly worded feedback to Apple, just dragging them through the mud and taking nothing that we've talked about into today's episode into account. Just they are the faceless corporation, so drag them through the mud. I'm just kidding.
Or I can make it seem like I listened to anything we just said, but didn't actually, and just like make up a person. It's like, hey, Greg, I'm a little disappointed that we still have this issue. It'd be really nice of you to fix it. And then the team like, does anyone know a Greg?
No, and then there actually is a Greg, and he's like, oh no, this is all my fault.
Greg, what did you do?
It's like, I just started working here a week ago. He's been having this issue for years. I don't know.
Was there another Greg this whole time?
Dude, ruin someone's life. Speed run.
But then, like, add a little personal details, like, hey, Greg, it was great meeting you at Dub Dub.
Oh my gosh, dude.
That would be the most confusing email because it would probably get forwarded to the team at that point. You know?
Yeah.
Like it became like so just personal enough to like actually make it through the many layers of like defense that they probably have to protect their employees against stuff like this. Because that's the whole reason like Radar and Feedback Assistant exists. Like we like to think of it as like, oh, Apple's being distanced. They don't want to actually connect us with anyone. They don't want their engineers bothered by us randos like complaining about everything because we have been trained that Apple is a giant corporation, so we're never going to be nice about it, right? And they don't want their employees being impacted by that. Like I used to remember a boss once told me like my job is to protect you from the insanities of the rest of the company, and that way you can do your work most effectively. And I guess Apple's doing that excellently because their number one priority is not developers. Like I'm gonna say it out loud. I know people don't like hearing it. It's their own. It's what they're building, and I would hope that their own employees are part of those set of priorities. But I don't know because I don't work there, so I'm not gonna make an assumption there. Even though I did. And they're gonna try to separate them from that. Some employees try to be more public, and you can see them get dragged for it publicly. And it's like they're trying to help you by being a little more open about what they're kind of working on when it's appropriate. And the best you do is complain to them and nag at them. It's like, why would they want to do? They're not getting paid to help you. Like that is not their job. Yeah. Their job is to stay away from you. And the only thing you've done is kind of support that further. And I think that's a little unfortunate.
I mean, yeah, I think it goes back to everything that we've been talking about, where if everything was a bit more positive and constructive, I think progress in whatever way it would be in context to whatever we're talking about, um, could be made faster, or at the very least, the mental health of those that are making that progress could be better, um, at the very least.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's just tough all around. Like there's so much emotion at play. And we're
Yeah.
not even talking about like global politics. We're just talking about like us being
App Store
developers working in
review.
a platform that yeah, and it's mostly a platform that works. Like
Mhm.
people are not made poorer by the App Store existing. Like sure, it's hard to make it as an indie developer, but it's still not impossible. Like if you really want to be an indie developer, you can make Mac apps, and those are profitable. Sorry, iOS apps, the customer base has diluted such that one, the ones that are going to pay are not going to see it, and two, the ones that are not going to pay are never going to pay. So you're not going to be able to be profitable there. But Mac users tend to still buy software. So if you really want to make an app and you really want to make money, make a Mac productivity app of some sort that helps solve a personal or a business need, and you will make money. I've seen it like time and time again. So it is not impossible as the world at large would like to make you believe. And it just takes hard work, and you don't need to play in Apple's hand. Like the Mac App Store is an excellent example. Is kind of desolate, and like you just need to make $10 worth of profits to get at the top of charts. And that is not like a healthy thing. Which means that people don't check the Mac App Store. So
Yeah.
you need to learn how to market your app yourself. Like Apple's not responsible for your marketing. They might help your marketing, but they're not responsible for it. Like I think it's easy to blame Apple because they it seems like they should be like taking part in more that they are doing than they are doing, if that makes any sense.
Oh yeah.
And it's easy to blame them for not doing it when it's just been your assumption all along. Like the raw truth of it is Apple is not there to make you succeed. They will profit off of your success like as much as they can. But it's up to you to succeed.
Yep.
And once you're succeeding, like whether they profit off your success or not, like you can then change your framing and say like, oh, they're taking all my success. And therefore, like, I deserve extra. But, like, it's a fictional thing. Like, you decided a random price for your thing, and it's just part of the contract that you sign. A contract. Who'd have thunk that contracts are a thing? That you are agreeing to pay them 30% of whatever price you picked.
Yep.
So, like, if you want to make that 30% back, pick a higher price, and that is yours now. Like you can try to say, oh, but it's not worth this, or it's not worth anything. It's a piece of software. You're selling a license to it.
Yeah.
Like it's ephemeral. It's not like an object that you took like actual. There is an actual base like price or of a bill
Like
of materials
resources,
that went into making it. No, like your development resources were finite. Like, however many copies you sell have nothing to do with however many hours you put into it. And I think that's a thing that people don't really get. And it's a little hard to explain it because no one's kind of expecting that that message. Like, you wanna stick to hating the bad guy as much as possible, and you're like, Dimitri, you're not being helpful to this conversation. Like, we're supposed to be going against Apple here, but that's not gonna improve things.
Yeah.
The only thing that can do to improve things is for you to not you, our audience member, but you in general.
The clarification again.
What we say, the clarification. But it's important that you in general think about what specifically you need to do to make your app more into a business if you want it to make money, first of all.
Yeah.
Like, if you don't care about making money, then who cares? But if you do care about it making money, you need to think of it as a business. You need to think of it with a marketing strategy, a business plan. Like I haven't heard that term in forever. But to actually draft out like who your potential market is, what are they willing to pay for something,
Right. Do some research.
and do some research and do the calculations. If I only get 70% of that, and then of that 70%, I only get to keep 60% of that from like taxes and all that. Am I able to like survive off that in terms of like continual development and everything? And if those equations look right, then congratulations, you have something that's viable. If they don't, then I'm like, there's nothing harder to say than sorry, like it's not going to work out. Like you see it in, it's not just app development, like even restaurants. A lot of restaurants that you see come and go, they just did not do the basic calculation of like whatever our capacity is, like say at lunchtime, if that is never going to make up for the cost of doing that business, it's never gonna survive.
Right.
Never. Like you can be hopeful as like, oh, we just need 50% more customers. You can't serve 50% more customers. Like it's just an impossibility. So, oh, we just need to raise the prices, but then those customers won't come. Yeah. Like that is another, like depending on like which area you are, if there's other restaurants around and it's like way cheaper for the similar kind of food, then there's just something wrong with the math there. That's just not going to work out. And I think it's important to think about that as much as possible. If you do want to be successful at making your own apps as an indie, you need to be that one person that can do it all, unfortunately, until you can hire people that are better at you at doing certain things.
Yeah.
That may come eventually, but may never come. And it may just be like, oh, hey, you can support this if you're the only one doing it. And that might be a good thing because then you don't have to do anything else. Like you just focus on making this one app and supporting it and working on the marketing, but you can't be negligent of the fact that you are responsible for all that. No one else is. Sure, you can say that, hey, Apple is getting in the way of this or that, and App Review doesn't like my idea, but like that is part of the calculation, right? It's a non-tangible, it's an untangible thing in terms of money. Like you can't just say like, oh, that's that was $50,000 in terms of like my calculations ahead of time. But that could have, that's something that you need to think of from the beginning. Like if it's anywhere close to being a fringe idea that you don't think is going to be possible, like either pick a platform where that is going to be possible and work from there. Android, maybe, like you can hope on the side loading aspects there, or on the Mac, it's a lot easier to just do whatever you want. And maybe reframe the iOS app as just a helper companion thing that's not actually doing that thing. And then that can be a way of going around that, or make a mobile experience that can just do whatever you need. I mean, there's a reason why so many things are just web apps nowadays, is because you can do whatever you want in that scenario. And yeah,
except
I don't
write
know.
Swift.
I'm just ranting at this point.
Tier.
No, you can totally write Swift
For a web app?
Yeah, totally. Have you heard of WebAssembly?
That's right.
Projects?
Yeah, it wasn't, right?
Yeah. So Swift Wasm is a thing, and there's a library called Tokamak that's kind of like Swift UI, and you can build out your DOM using that. Okay. And yeah, that's something that's totally possible, right? It's just you need to change your framing or just learn web technologies. I mean, it's something you can quite literally learn in a week. And I don't mean that as like a downer on all the people that spent years perfecting what they know on web technologies. I mean it as, hey, you have experience doing development.
Yeah.
You can pick up something that's similar but different in a week. Like, it's not going to take very long. You're not going to be the best at it. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that you can start that process and maybe write the worst code that's going to get your idea to market. Like, that is totally doable. And then think about rewriting it or making it scale gracefully like later. Mm-hmm. And that once you have something that's viable. If you do know everything, then you can make it scalable from the beginning, but like not everyone does. So that's not something you should feel like you need to worry about. But long story short, don't think that blaming Apple for like App Store or this or that is going to make anything better. All it's doing is blaming Apple. Like, congratulations, you feel better because you put them down. But that didn't make your idea a possibility.
Right.
And that's like the whole point of this, right? It's the negativity is not going to actually fix anything. It's not thinking about the past and thinking about the future or thinking about the now is actually going to make a difference. But thinking about the past and blaming and putting them down is not going to help. Like, that's the bottom line.
Yep. I got nothing else. You're right.
No, let's end it there.
All right. Bye.
Bye.